All right. Welcome to another episode of The Close Up. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, a part of the Orlando Magic HQ network. Today's a fun one. We have the season preview with Orlando Magic writer Dan Savage. You've heard him on my show many a times over the years. He is, one of the main writers for the Orlando Magic, works for the Magics in and around the facility on a regular basis, talking to players, observing, coming up with great stories to cover the team about. And we have a pretty awesome season preview for you guys. We talk about the additions of Desmond Bane, how that's going to help the offense. We talk about the additions of the coaching staff. We talk about player development with Anthony Black and Jed Howard and Tristan Da Silva. We have such a really good conversation. I'm looking forward to you guys listening to it. But before we get to that, I just want to remind you guys to please like and subscribe to this if you are on YouTube. There's so many of you that watch this content that are not subscribed, and we would love for you to subscribe to our content and give this video a like. It certainly helps us a lot in the rankings and the algorithms. If you're listening to this on a podcast, go ahead and leave us a review and a rating. That would be great. 5 stars would be appreciated if that's what you can do. Last thing I want to plug is our Patreon program. We're rocking that again this year. It comes with a lot of benefits with exclusive content, discounts to home tickets at Kia Center for Magic games, and a bunch of other benefits. You can find out that information in the link in the description. So check out our Patreon page, or you can just go to Patreon. Magic HQ, I think, is the extension. So check that out. And stay tuned to all things Orlando Magic HQ this season. We're going to be your spot for breaking news, articles, for, podcasts, our weekly shows on YouTube, and, just all the latest news and rumors. So keep us on your minds, all right? We appreciate you all listening and tuning in, and this is going to be such a great season. Without further ado, this is our conversation with Dan Savage of the Orlando Magic. Like I said, everyone, we got Dan Savage, head of OrlandoMagic.com. What's going on, Dan Savage? How you doing today? It's been a while since we've chatted.
It has been. A lot has gone on since the last time we've talked, so we'll have a lot to catch up on. But what an exciting time to cover the Magic, be a fan of the Magic, work for the Magic. Any of those things apply. It's an exciting time because, my gosh, what an off season. It didn't feel like an off season, but we can catch up on all of that. A lot going on.
It seems like, you started coming on my show, I think before I even joined Orlando Magic HQ, when I was just doing my own thing, and we were like in the thick of a rebuild before we even had like Paulo and Franz. We've been talking for years now. And now, like, where we're at having the kind of conversation we're about to have today is like, we've had some progress, Dan, and this is fun. Our conversations are evolving, just the two of us. And I'm excited to have some fun. Today is like a little bit of a season preview. I feel like you and I kind of always check in at like kind of good times throughout the season. We'll normally do a show during the off season. We'll do like a mid-season check-in, and then we typically do one like right before the playoffs, and we're kind of hitting that right before the season's starting. We know there's a lot of change that's happened with this Orlando Magic roster and team, and I'm looking forward to diving into it. So let's just get into it, Dan. Let's just talk about the big offseason move that happened and how that's going to affect. The Magic traded, beloved Cole Anthony, had been with this franchise for many years. KCP, who they had signed the year prior, 4 first-round picks and a pick swap for Desmond Bane. When that went down, how did you feel during that time?
A lot of excitement. So, there's always players you have on your wish list as you're like, doing like I do. I watch League Pass every night. I have all these games on. I have a room with multiple TVs. And, even as the Magic games are going on, if there's a game I'm covering from home, got a whole bunch of games going on. You're looking at players thinking, how could they fit with the Magic? Would they be available? And Desmond just seemed like a guy you're not sure if he was even going to be available, because the Memphis team is talented. With Ja being in and out of the lineup as he has been, of course, would they risk giving up on a Desmond Bane, even if they were deciding to alter course? And for him to be available and then for this team to acquire him is huge. And it really goes down to what Jeff Weltman said when they were acquired. He's built with Magic DNA. His makeup fits into the locker room. the skills he provides are the perfect fit for what the Magic need. So when you draw it up, almost like if you were creating a player that would fit with this Magic core, you draw up a Desmond Bane. And I think the thing that's been most exciting about him is even in his brief time here, the things that you're doing are even better than advertised. And so that just has to make you excited for what's going to come this season with him. It's all going to come down to what happens on the court. But up to this point, he's delivered and more for what's been expected. And just a guy that you look at and you're like, yeah, he would fit. And for Jeff to be able to find a way to acquire him without giving up members of the core, the young core, is exciting. Now, with that being said, you did have to part ways with Cole Anthony, who was huge in help turning this thing around. And you get to give up on KCP, who brought it defensively every night, even though, maybe for the first half of the season especially, didn't hit on the shooting numbers that fans expected. But, what a pull for Jeff Weltman and team to make a blockbuster move like that. Very exciting.
When you're thinking about Desmond Bane and the fit, obviously we know this team needs shooting, even though they tried to address it in ways last year with getting KCP and, internal growth. It seemed like the whole team, something was in the water in Orlando. Things were just not working well with the shot from three. But outside of that, like fit wise, how do you think Desmond Bane being on this roster is going to raise the ceiling and just stylistically work with Paulo and Franz, and even Suggs for that matter? How do you think that fit stylistically is going to work and look while potentially changing the ceiling of this roster?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Steven. I think that's going to be a focus of questions asked on Media Day. It's going to be something pay attention to throughout training camp and into the preseason, is how does this offense look? Because I think defensively, he can plug in and still allow Mose and staff to do a lot of the things they like and where they've been so successful, ranking top 5 in the NBA in defense over the last couple of years. I think offensively, what you're going to notice is this team playing with more pace, because you're going to have 4 guys in Jalen, Desmond, Paulo, Franz that are all more than capable of taking the ball up the floor and going. And then you have a 5th guy in there in Wendell, who's willing to run the floor and can pass, right off a rebound and get the thing going. So I think you're going to look for a faster pace offensively. And I think you're just going to look for a lot of versatility offensively, where you have 4 guys who are all capable of not only creating a shot for themselves, but also creating a shot for others. And I think the really hard thing for other defenses to adjust to is when that starting 5 group is out there, is who do you put your weakest defender on? Because, there are times you could look at a guy and be like, you know what, he's just going to stand in a corner and shoot a 3. So we could put our weakest defender over there and cheat over there. But with this group, you can't do that. What if Jalen Suggs goes to a corner? You're going to put, not to pick on a guy, but just a Trae Young on him. Well, if he decides to drive, that's going to be a challenge on a guy like that. So I think this Magic team becomes a harder team to match up against, especially when the starters are in there. And I think they're going to play a lot faster and try to take advantage of teams, because you could get the matchups you want easier with pace.
It's going to be interesting to see how much gravity he pulls as a player too, compared to KCP, who did bring gravity into to an extent to himself. But it's like, when you're talking about a guy taking 3 to 4 threes a game and KCP, to a guy who's going to take, potentially 8 a game and can score in more ways than KCP could, it's going to be really interesting to see how that will open up this space for Paulo and Franz. Like, maybe they won't see as many double and occasionally triple teams, and things will be a little bit more balanced out, which should hopefully open up the floor for them to operate a lot more and potentially take advantage of mismatches without having another guy right on top of them. I mean, I think it's always going to be like Paulo's probably getting double teamed to an extent. But in that case, then you're thinking like, wow, what kind of wide open shot is Desmond Bane or Jalen Suggs going to have off of a kick out, which I just think is so exciting. And I can't remember the last time the Magic had a player that shot. Jalen Suggs has increased his volume, but outside of him, there hasn't been too many guys that are taking more than 4 or 5 attempts from 3. I mean, I don't think we've ever had anyone in the last handful of years take 7 or 8 a game, which is just kind of insane to think about because of the modern day NBA era that we play in, just the type of struggling this team has had over the years with shooting. Like, I guess my question and my point of being that, do you think Desmond Bane and we're going to jump to him in a second, but Tyus Jones, who is a good 3-point shooter, do you think that's enough addition to the offense to fix the 3-point shooting at a rate that's going to be like successful in a sense? Like the Magic were 29th, 30th in the league in 3-point shooting last year. Do you think those two bring us to league average?
Well, there's a number of stats out there. When the Magic shoot close to league average, their winning percentage is through the roof. And so I think not only with the addition of Desmond, with the addition of Tyus, adding a guy like Jace Richardson in the draft, who's also capable of shooting the three, you would expect there were a number of guys who just had down shooting years that even if they go back to averages, and that's not to mention incremental growth, which I think you would expect is built into a young group like this. We've seen Jalen make progress over the course of his year. Paolo's expanded his game. Franz continues to work on that, etc. That you would expect those numbers to come back. Mo Wagner, when he's healthy, what he can do as a stretch big. Goga's been working on his shot, expanding his range. So I think everybody has 3-point shooting built into their development plan. And I can attest from being here and talking to even guys who've traveled that they've all worked extensively. I mean, this has been an off season of tremendous work for this group that I would expect between those additions, the incremental growth and just a return to averages. I mean, it was a crazy season that I think guys are going to get better looks because of those guys. Let's not forget Desmond has more gravity, can create better shots. And then a guy like Tyus just knows how to get the floor going and find guys. I mean, he's at a tremendous assist to turnover ratio, that there will be better shots created. And as a result, there'll be even better looks. That all of that together is going to push this team up a level in terms of 3-point shooting. So that's what I expect to see. I expect this team to be much more close to league average. And there have been stages of seasons, like if you look at the end of not last season, but the season before, where they've shot close to a league average team. And this group is capable of it without even the additions.
They've had stretches for sure.
So that's what I expect out of this group, but obviously we'll have to see it. And I think part of that too, this team brings it defensively every night, and it is harder to shoot the three when you play with the level of defensive prowess that this team does. That's always going to be something baked into it. But I do expect it to be more closer to a league average, which we've shown with this group, if they play like they do defensively, shoot close to a league average, they're going to be a very successful team that wins a lot of games.
Yeah, I tend to agree with pretty much everything you said there. It's going to be really cool to see it all come into place and something we've all been hoping and begging to see for a while. And, you're right. You've said it a few times, but we haven't really talked about it yet. Desmond fits the identity of the defense really well. He will have his limitations there to an extent here and there, but he's a positive defender. I wouldn't say he's a weakness there. And he goes after it. And that's exactly the type of two-way player that this team and front office value a lot. And it's nice to not have to worry about the team's identity changing with such a big addition offensively, hopefully just continuing to rise that offensive floor. Now, you mentioned Goga taking threes. I just want to pause there for a second. I think
we saw it in Eurobasket.
We did, and we've seen it a couple of times in the league. In regular season. Just go to my timeline whenever he makes a three, because I call him Goga Curry. He's the third or fourth Splash Brother, depending on the day. So that's my little joke that I say with my friends, and we'll post on the timeline. So yeah, Goga Curry. Check out my timeline whenever he's making threes during the season, because that's my guy when he's making them. I love it. Tyus Jones. So after the summer, after the big trade for Desmond Bane, free agency opens, and there's still questions to be had, right? The Magic lost Cole Anthony in the trade, obviously. There were some free agents in Corey Joseph and Gary Harris that were, not sure if they were going to retain or not. So there's some questions on how they were going to fill out that second unit and what that was really going to look like. What were you thinking kind of going into that time? before they signed Tyus Jones. And I mean, I think we both agree Tyus is a great fit for what this team is doing right now. But were you kind of surprised that he was the person that was selected? Did you have your thoughts on someone else, or was he someone on your radar? He was kind of on my radar. He wasn't necessarily at the top of my list, but I like the more I started doing the thought process of who's available, right? What are we trading? Are we signing outright, and kind of thinking of it that way? Even though he wasn't at the top of my list, he quickly came to the top of the realistic list. And I
Yeah.
was like, I actually wouldn't be surprised about this because I'm excited he's on our team. Don't get me wrong. But in general, I tend to stray away from guards that have defensive limitations like Tyus Jones does have, and that's clearly documented and shown. Like, I'm not breaking news with that statement or anything like that. I don't think I'm saying anything too controversial there, but I think offensively he's going to fit so well. And like next to, Anthony Black and some of the other defensive players, I think there's ways, the defensive weaknesses that he does have won't be as big of an issue as maybe they were with other teams he's played on. But like, back to the original, what were you thinking for that second unit before we signed Tyus Jones? And like, how are you feeling now that we have him?
Yeah, I'll just touch on the defensive limitation part since
Sure.
you mentioned we could get that out of the way. I think if you look at his Phoenix and Washington numbers, leave something to be desired defensively, and nobody's going to claim that that's absolutely a strength of his. But then if you go back and actually look at the Memphis numbers when he was around players who have similar defensive capabilities to what the Magic are, they're better than
Yeah, for
those
sure.
two past seasons have. And so you have to kind of look at personnel. And I think with what the Magic have, he becomes a good fit into that. So
Right.
without them, I don't think they'll have to even adjust what they do tremendously. I think he's got enough size to him. When you kind of see him in person, you see that there's some size there that it's not like a player where you have to go, well, he's out there, we're changing what we do. I don't think that's going to be the case with him. Then when it comes to the free agency part where you're considering adding him, when you look at the things that he does and what the Magic lack, there's a clear correlation there. So his ability to assist without turning the ball over, he
It's
ranks at the
huge.
top in that. Really high up in knocking down open threes. And how many times have we seen the Magic generate a open look, and they either had a guy who was in a little bit of a shooting slump, so he hesitated and didn't take the look that was provided, or didn't knock it down. So he does those, and he's got a good floater too, which with the way that the defenses tend to play the Magic, he should have some opportunities in that regard. So I think he's a good fit in that, when you look at the Magic starting lineup, there's a lot of guys who are going to be tasked with creating. You want the ball in Paulo Franz's hands. They're offensive hubs. That's when they're most effective. But there's not like a true point guard yet. Jalen's
For
still
sure.
developing in that role. Desmond Bane's still developing in that role. He's done it at times with Memphis. But Tyus provides that guy who's like, if you just want to find somebody an open shot, he can do that. So I think he fits in a lot of those areas and, does it at a cost where he could, be a spot starter if needed in a stretch, or could do it primarily for the second unit as we expect when the Magic are fully healthy and at full go. So I think that in terms of all that, he's a great fit. And then you add on top of that, great person, is around, wants to win, and has connections with a number of these guys already. Played with Desmond Bane in Memphis, was kind of a mentor for Jalen Suggs as he was growing up. So he's got ties, and he just fits into the locker room and does a lot of things that this team needs that I think, make him a great fit for this team.
When it comes to Tyus Jones and Anthony Black, I want to focus on those two for a second here. Because, in years last year, we saw Anthony Black be pretty heavy on ball, particularly for that second unit. There was some staggering there with Paulo and Franz when they were available to take some of that ball handling off. And sometimes we'd see Cole Anthony run a little bit of it too. But there was a lot more emphasis on Anthony Black being a ball handler for that unit and growing in that way. Now we've added Tyus Jones, who can play on and off ball. How do you think that's going to benefit Anthony Black going into year 3 and his development. I think there's a lot of positives there, but I'd love to hear what you think before I jump in.
Yeah, I'm going to be really curious to see what that on-court fit looks like. I think it's very capable because Anthony Black can defend up. So
Mhm.
there doesn't become a dynamic of like, can you play these two guys together because of
Right.
what Black is capable of doing defensively. And then offensively, Tyus is such a good shooter that even if he doesn't have the ball in the hands, it's not like he's not bringing anything to the table.
Sure.
So you have a lot of flexibility there in how you choose to approach it. But I think his maturity, the decision making, the way he sees the game, to be around a young floor general like Anthony Black is only going to be beneficial. And I am super, super, super high on Anthony Black. Like,
Yeah.
I think he can be an X factor that, takes a Magic team and helps push him to a next level if he hits his ceiling, because he is as good a defender as you'll see. He's got tremendous size and his work ethic is through the roof. I mean, this kid, we've seen him make jumps every year, and I expect this year to be another one. And if he could just raise his floor, we've seen the flashes of really high end player.
We have.
If he could just raise his floor and make those flashes more consistent, then I think it's going to create a whole nother problem for teams in the Eastern Conference if Anthony Black's hitting his ceiling. And I
Well,
am really bullish on Anthony Black because of the work that he puts in and the type of kid he is. So I'm really high on them. And I think having another mentor in the room of like Tyus Jones, who can show him the way things are done offensively, can only help his development.
and we've already heard Desmond in a few different interviews he's done since the acquisition, joining the Magic. And he's talked about Tyus Jones going to be a great leader for the younger guards, which is awesome. And then we also know the coaching staff was, they added Shamgod, who works with guards a lot in that area too. So I'm looking forward to the growth on ball from Anthony Black. But what I think is going to be really cool is he's never really played with a point guard as polished as Tyus before. So I'm interested to see Anthony Black's off ball growth there, right?
Yeah.
Are we going to see more cutting and more trailing with him? Are we going to, instead of, because I think in past when he's played off ball, he's kind of mostly just kind of gone to a corner, stood there, would wait for opportunities. It wouldn't be all the time, obviously, but there was like a high percentage, just wait for the corner three because he was, pretty decent at corner threes. But I'm excited to see hopefully some more aggressive growth off ball there with such a polished ball handler in Tyus Jones next to him that might give him the confidence to be able to, just increase his off-ball offensive ability there and confidence when he is going to make a cut instead of just stand in the corner or switch to a different match on the defensive side to then maybe Tyus is getting him open and with a cut or something like that. So I'm excited about that because I am also pretty high on Anthony Black, and you're right, like it's the flashes of what he can do have been there. We've seen it in multiple games. The one game that constantly pops back is the game against the Dallas Mavericks a while ago, where I think he went off for like 21 points and was just like super efficient. And so you're right. If he can just bring up his floor a little bit with getting a little bit more efficient with his finishing around the rim, a little bit more confident with his mid game, and let's get that 3-point percentage up a little bit more. I think this is just going to be really, really awesome year for him growth wise. Learning from Shamgod, learning from Tyus Jones, and that on and off ball, like you mentioned, Tyus is he's not a slump off ball. I think he shoots like 40 or 45% from three on kickouts. And so, if Black's got that ball and he's driving and kicking out to Tyus, like that's going to be a really nice match make. And with the size difference, even like, hey, are we going to see some guard on guard pick and roll between the two of them? Like that could be pretty fun too, with Anthony Black setting screens for Tyus, because Anthony Black's a big, strong guard, that'll be pretty fun to see. So I'm looking forward to that. How do you, with Jet and the guards, I want to talk about Jet real quick for a second, right? Because the hierarchy has shifted a little bit with the guards. There's Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones. How do you feel like Jet Howard kind of fits into just the guard situation in general right now. We know his first couple of years have been a little rocky. Like, what are you looking for Jet this year in season 3?
I think for Jet, it's all about consistency. We all know he can shoot the heck out of the ball.
Yeah, he's fast.
He has that
Quick
ability.
release.
He's willing to let it rip. Confident is not an issue with his shot in any shape or form. So he can definitely help the team in the fashion. It's going to be, is he up to everything game plan wise, defensively, all that type of stuff that goes into being a pro and aging in this league with any, young player. Can he hit those marks to get on the court? Because as you attested, they're not easy guys to jump. When we were doing these things, back in 2016, 17, you'd be like, oh, well, there's a clear role for Jet Howard. He's a young guy. He has to play. Now you really have to earn your time. It's more than just coach speak. It's, there are talented vets above you. So I think the thing with Jet is there's a clear role where he can help this team. There's a clear vision for things that he can do. And is he progressing enough as a player? Did he have a great offseason? From what I've seen, he's put in a tremendous amount of work, with a lot of these coaches and done a lot of the things to prepare himself to have a good season. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about as we get underway for training camp, is just seeing how he's progressed in a lot of those areas as a pro to be ready to, handle when teams, as they've done, decide to call Jet Howard over in a pick and roll situation. Is he hanging true with the defensive principles? Is he doing all those things to the top of his ability? Because if he is, he can really be another player that can help this Magic offense and help those 3-point shooting numbers.
I agree. I mean, like, I have not seen a player in a Magic uniform with a release as fast as his. And
Quick.
he's one of the players that is really like, he's not afraid to be quick off ball to then like go catch a shot curling off a screen. And I'm looking forward to seeing if some of that will click a little bit more. And we know, like, we all want this team to be healthy, but we know there's going to be times where players banged up here and there, and everyone 1 through 14 at this point will get called at some point. If we fill the 15th spot, that 15th man will eventually play at some point too. That's just how the regular season works. So I'm looking forward to. I still got plenty of real estate on Jet Island, and I'm ready to type my post on X, fire the Jet engines when he's hit 2 or 3 threes, in a game, and it's looking pretty hot there. I'm looking forward to that. But I'm looking forward to seeing him. Year 3 is a pretty big year for a lot of players, and we'll see if his consistency can increase this year, and we're looking forward to that.
Just real quick.
Yeah, for sure.
You made a great point there. If you were to say to me last season, Corey Joseph would be starting at the end of the regular season and starting into the playoffs, I would have been like, no, that's not what he was brought here to do. And he ends up doing it and doing it very effectively, for what was asked of him and what he's capable of. So it just goes to show you, like, even if the opportunity isn't there for Jet, which I don't know, I think those answers will come in training camp preseason. Doesn't mean that they won't be there at any point this season, because as we've seen, fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, opportunities will come for everyone over the course of an NBA season. You're on the roster, an opportunity will come for you. It's just, are you going to be ready to capitalize on that moment? And so that's what training camp will be about. That's what preseason will be about. And that's why I'm so excited for both those things to come, because I think there's a lot of guys to be excited about and see what growth they made.
Absolutely. And, we can just kind of talk about the depth right now of this Magic roster. We know Mo Wagner is recovering from his ACL injury. We know Jalen Suggs had his knee surgery, is recovering from that. We've heard that things are going well with both of those guys, and I'm not going to ask for an injury update on those players. We'll get that in next week during media day. But I want to talk about the depth, because I could see, we know we have some track record with the Magic front office and their coaching staff on how they, they're cautious and careful with player injuries, specifically during the regular season. They try not to, they'll bake in, hey, maybe you're not going to play back-to-backs, or maybe you're going to be on a little bit of a minute restriction here and there, or take a game off here and there. If Mo and Jalen are not ready at the start of the year, there probably won't be any hesitation to just, hey, let's wait a few more weeks and get them, come in maybe closer to like November or some time frame like that. I'm not going to speculate right now. I'm assuming everyone's playing game 1 because it's not media day. We don't have the official updates yet. But when you look at this Magic roster, I think you and I can both agree we have enough data on the center rotation. Like Goga can come in and fill in as a starter or a second unit big. Probably on most teams, he would just be a standalone, like second unit big. Some teams maybe even their starter because he is just that talented of a player. But when it comes to the rest of the roster, right, we're talking wings, we're talking guards. How are you feeling about the depth? Because this team, with the offseason moves that they've made, there are expectations for them to be a legit team in the Eastern Conference, right? A team that could very easily make a really good playoff run, potentially Eastern Conference playoff. Like, I'm not sure what goals they're setting, but those are the types of things people are saying about this Magic roster. When you have teams in those situations, oftentimes their benches are filled a little bit more with older veteran experience. And this year, for this Magic roster, which is a very young roster, I think the oldest guy is like 29 on the team. And I think that is Tyus Jones, maybe. I think he might be the oldest guy on the team right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, we
11
have
seasons for Tyus,
Noah
so.
Penda and we have Jace Richardson or Richards. And even guys like Jet, like, when you're looking at the third unit depth, how are you feeling about that? Would you say, are you, I mean, we're all confident. We're going into media day. We're going into the new season. We all hope things will work out. But with the expectations of this team to be a playoff team and where they're at, are there any questions that we still kind of need to see and figure out? We do have an open roster spot. At some point, the Magic will financially be able to do that as salaries decrease. I don't know. I guess I'm saying, how do you feel about the depth of this team? I just gave you a long question, but in summary, how are you feeling about the depth?
It's a good question because, as you alluded to, there are some teams that, if you were saying they're entering a contention window, would fill that back end with minimum veteran type signings or mid-level, et cetera type signings. I think what's so exciting about the Magic is when you look at their depth, there's a lot of room for incremental growth and guys to hit ceilings that maybe veterans towards the tail end of their career wouldn't be able to hit. And I think that's what makes the long-term future of this Magic team so exciting, because you look at the back end and you're like, well, what if AB pops and hits another level? What if Jonathan Isaac, returns to defensive menace form, is able to play a little bit more minutes and is more versatile with a little less weight on him? What if, at the back end, Jet Howard hits his ceiling and is, in addition to being a great shooter, playing good enough defensively that he's out there a fair bit more? What if Jace Richardson continues to develop as a rookie and shoots at the level we know he's capable of? The tools on Noah Penda, I think if that 3-point shot develops as the Magic brass expects it to, you're talking about a guy who's going to have a 12-year career as a tremendous versatile role player. We haven't even gotten to Tristan da Silva yet, who
great offseason for him, it seems like.
Does a lot of things like Franz does at a similar size, and can be a great second unit player who could, I think can grow as a shot creator if he becomes more aggressive, but at the very least is being solid defensively and a knockdown shooter from the outside. So there's a lot of guys, I'm not even getting to some of them, that can pop and have, bigger futures on their horizon. We all know Mo Wagner can enter a game and have 10 points instantly. He just has that about him. Goga, as we saw, put in a lot of work this offseason and is coming into the season fully ready. He just came off a Eurobasket thing, and we tend to see guys who play in Eurobasket have some of their best seasons, and that's not exclusive to the Magic. We've seen Giannis's MVP seasons correlate with when he's playing overseas. So those type of things are happening. You see the type of shape Luka's in, like those type of things. So I'm really bullish on the Magic's depth, because I think there's an opportunity for those guys to all grow, and that by the time the playoffs hit, they're all playing at higher levels than what we currently view them as. And now that may mean some growing pains early in the season.
Sure.
That may mean some tougher stretches where you're like, oh, could you use another veteran guy? But I think long term and heading into the playoffs this year, I'm really bullish on the Magic's depth, because they have a lot of growth opportunity within it, which a lot of teams who you're arguing are in contention, you couldn't say that for.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You've been around the facility a lot this offseason, I imagine.
Yeah,
It's been a full
you're right
offseason.
now.
You're there right now. Yeah, we can see it in the background. And we know some of our guys have been overseas, like you mentioned. Goga, Franz, Tristan da Silva, they all played Euro basketball. But all of them seem to have a pretty awesome run over there. But as far as what the facility has felt like and who you've seen around, we all know every player is practicing, right? And working on their game. We know Paulo spent a decent amount of time in Seattle working on his game. We know Jet was in Miami for a little while. I mean, those are their home cities. There's no questions on why they're there, and we all know they're working on their stuff. But who have been some of the familiar faces you've seen on a regular basis in the Magic training facility? And has there been anything this offseason that like has surprised you or took you off guard that you walked in like, I didn't expect that, or maybe did someone just play a prank on you? I don't know. But like, yeah, what was the offseason like in the facility for you?
I mean, the level of player participation has been high. I'll just say that. And right now, it seems like, even ahead of media day, that everybody's back here putting in work and building in, building those bonds that championship teams have. The one thing that's really struck me is, when you trade for a guy like Desmond Bane, you know what you're getting as a player. We all can watch games, we can look at advanced metrics. You really don't know what you're getting as a person. And, that's, an old coach used to say, you don't really know a player till you coach them. And I think, it's hard to really know a player till he's in your facility. And the thing that struck me about Desmond is since the second he's gotten here, he has put it upon himself to build connections with every player, whether that was going out and meeting up with Paolo, whether that's working with the young guys like AB, Jet, etc. Here. He has found a way to connect himself and make him an integral part that I think his transition in is not only going to be seamless from a basketball perspective, but from a locker room perspective as well, because already prior to the season, prior to training camp, prior to media day, he has put in the work to build those relationships. And so to me, I've just been blown away with him as a person and as a guy that you're adding to the locker room, which I think when you look at blockbuster trades is definitely not a guarantee. I
Sure.
mean, there's a litany of recent history. When you go to add a big star player into an existing group, it does not always work out. And I think because of the type of person he is, in addition to his on-court fit, that is going to be a much more seamless transition than we've seen in recent big NBA trades. And that's just blown me away. Having spoken to guys with Memphis who are in similar types of roles with me, the glowing reviews of him, I mean, he has met those and shattered them. So that's what's really excited me about Desmond. And when you talk to him, and I've had a few opportunities to either be as he's speaking to a group or et cetera, one-on-one, he is just so dialed in on winning. I mean, that is what he wants to do. That's where he feels the focus is. And I think that just says a lot about him.
It's interesting because typically when you have a new player, and this will be asked, I'm sure, on media day,
Yeah.
what is your leadership style, right? And some, like, KCP, we saw, he was like kind of like an extension of Coach Mosley on during timeouts and talking to people and like a pretty vocal guy. No question about his leadership there in my mind. But like a lot of the times you'll get like a new player and they'll say, my leadership is I just lead by example. And to be honest, I think that just means you're not really much of a leader in a way, like, or you don't want to take on that job that really is leadership. And I don't get that sense at all that that's the type of answer or the type of person, even if that is maybe what he says. I don't think that's at all what Desmond Bane is going to be because like you mentioned, I mean, you just saw it firsthand. He's already putting in so much time to connect with these players. That's a form of leadership, in my opinion. From the veterans to the younger guys. He already seems someone, like you mentioned, who just wants to win and do the thing that's going to matter. He knows he's coming to a team where there are some opportunities for him to fill in a leadership and a vocal leadership type of role. And honestly, I mean, like, I feel like a guy who's done 3, 4, 5 podcasts in an offseason since being traded by the Orlando Magic, that just tells you he's a vocal type of person. And and going to put in the type of vocal and mental efforts to help bring this team to the next level, not just on the court, but off the court, in the locker room, practice, timeouts. And, Paulo and Franz are great at that. They're all getting stronger in their voice, but I think having a guy like Desmond Bane and even Tyus Jones, I'm assuming he's probably a vocal guy too. I think that's just going to be so strong and beneficial long run for this Magic roster. And I'm glad we're getting those guys that probably aren't just going to say, I just lead by example, because okay, I can see a guy coming in. I can see my boss walk in the office before I do, and then the last to leave. That's just kind of, I feel like, pretty stereotypical responses. But we all know a mentor impacts you so much more if they're vocal with you and helping you and coaching you up and telling you what they see and giving you the good and the bad feedback. And I don't see a hesitancy with Desmond Bane being that type of guy. It seems like he'll tell you what's good and what's bad and what he's seeing, and hold these players to a high standard. And I'm psyched that that's the type of player that this Magic roster is bringing into the organization. And, I don't know Tyus as well. I can't say I've listened to a lot of interviews of his, and he hasn't done nearly as many podcasts, if any, since, he joined the Magic, but it seems like he's going to, hopefully be another mold of that, just because of how high I've heard Desmond Bane speak about him, and the multiple times he said he's going to be a good leader for this franchise. So I'm really looking forward to kind of keeping my eyes on those sidelines when things are going on, and hearing kind of how people talk about each other in media sessions throughout the year and stuff. And I think that's just going to be really, really cool. Outside of player personnel, there's been some changes to the coaching staff. I just want to touch on that before we start to wrap this up.
Yeah, well, 40 minutes in, that shows what kind of busy off season it was. That 40 minutes in, I mean, there's some off seasons you made changes to the coaching staff 5 minutes in. That's what we'd be talking about. And we're 40 minutes in. We haven't touched on coaching changes. We haven't touched on a new logo, etc. Nope. It's just crazy how busy this offseason's been, that it's not even been an offseason.
Expectations of this teams have just changed. We have more to talk. We've hardly talked about Franz, and that's okay.
You just want to, gold medal type.
We haven't even really, we've hardly talked about Pons or Paulo there. Let's before we jump to the coaching staff, let's spend 2 minutes there.
Okay.
What are your expectations for Paulo and Franz? I'm going to leave it really simple. They're both going into year 4 and 5.
Yeah, I think the big thing for them, we've already seen both those guys make incremental growth year over year.
Yes.
So that's what you expect. And judging from Franz at Eurobasket, that's what I think you'll see. And Paulo has been very, very serious, and I would say thoughtful and direct in the way he's approached this offseason to improve in the areas which this team needs him to improve. So I no doubt expect incremental growth and greatness out of both those players. I expect all-star level type seasons from them. They've shown that they can do that in this league, and I think they'll have the type of years where they could do it as long as this team's winning, which if they're doing that, you should expect. I think what you'll hear as a theme at Media Day, and I think it's not a theme because somebody told them to make a theme. I think this is a naturally cultivated thing that when you hear it from Desmond and the conversations he's had and trying to figure out how Franz, Paulo are built, what they're trying to get out of this season, how they can get there collectively, I think that the themes are going to be a seriousness, focus level, and leadership growth. So I think the big area where internally you'll be looking at Franz and Paulo is how they continue to develop as leaders. And I think a guy like Desmond and a guy like Tyus, as you mentioned, being brought here will help push them hit that next level. And look, it's their team now. Both of them have proven that they can carry a franchise. Paulo's done it in stretches. Paulo was out. Franz took the reins and, did it too. So I think watching those two grow at leaders is going to be the biggest judge for them, because the other stuff I expect, and I think thus far they've met those challenges, and I think they're ready to continue to take that next step as leaders. And I think that's what's going to be Coach Mose is going to be expecting of them, because as he likes to say, this is a Mose-ism when you talk to him, it's, good, solid teams can be led by their coach. The great teams in this league are not only led by their coach, but are also led by their locker room. there are things that the coach doesn't even have to address because he knows that the players in the locker room are going to take care of it before he even gets to it. And so I think that's the expectation of this locker room, is get to become such a great locker room that it makes his job easier. And a lot of those problems are addressed even before he addresses them.
That makes a lot of sense. I love that your answer was about leadership because of just the big rant I went on about leadership just a moment ago.
No, it's
and
spot
that's
on.
perfect.
It's spot on, Steven.
On court, I'm hoping to see, I'll just say two things, increased 3-point percentage and reduced turnovers. Those are the two areas for both of them I'd like to see, because I feel like, when they hit the threes, it's just going to unlock another level to them as players and make them even more dangerous. We know they can, but it's more about like rising the floor of where they're hitting those threes at. All right. I know we're starting to run over on time, so I'll try and wrap it up real quick, but I do want to talk about the additions of the coaching staff. Shamgod, and Joe Prunty. How do you think these guys are going to affect this team? Both of them are coming in at slightly different roles. One's more of a player development. I think Joe Prunty, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to be like the lead assistant offensive coordinator type of player, or one of the lead assistants. But in general, how do you feel like these two additions are going to affect the roster?
Yeah, I don't like putting like labels on them because I know how Mose uses his staff, and like everybody does a little bit of everything. Like everybody helps with player development and everybody kind of helps with
that's fair
various game plans. But I think like Desmond, who had ties to various of these guys, and Tyus, which we've addressed, where he's played with Desmond, and what these two guys come in already having an attachment to Coach Mose, which is great about them. So Mose is mocking me. Actually,
come on in, Mose. Come join the show.
He's teasing my naturally expressive hand movements in this room. So no, that's just the kind of guy he is. But if he only knew what I was talking about right now.
I know, right? The irony of it.
But with those two guys, they come in with, he's not standing right outside this office. They come in with an attachment to him and knowing what to expect. So Mose knows how to operate him, how to speak to him, and get what he wants out of either of them. And Joe worked with him in Cleveland. As Mose describes him, he is a very level guy. He's been through winning streaks with him, and he was in a stretch with him in Cleveland where they lost like nearly 20-something straight post LeBron, and things were rough. And he said the one thing about him is he brought that same level of attitude through the highs and the lows, and that's what he admired so much about him. And then not only Moses spoke to about him, what he does offensively. I was just speaking to some people in Milwaukee who couldn't have spoken higher regard for the type of things he'll come up with offensively to either be solutions to problems or creative ways to get guys looks that are next level. And so I think as you're looking for the next evolution of this Magic's offense, as Paulo's making strides and becoming more dominant, as Franz is becoming an even better playmaker, as Desmond Bane's getting involved, as Jalen Suggs is developing as a floor general, you're going to be looking for creative ways to use all those guys and help them reach their ceilings. And I think Joe Prunty is going to help tremendously in that regard with coming up with new creative offensive solutions. And then, Coach Shamgod, however you want to go about it. I think I was told to call him Sham as
we'll go with Shams. That works.
Yeah. So, but the thing he brings to the table is a respect level in the basketball community from players as they're trying to develop their games. There's, we all grew up watching. He has a move named after him. There's no secret of the creativity that he could do with the ball. And from what I've heard, Anthony Black's been like tied to his hip trying to pick up all the information and, work on his handles.
That's
with
awesome
him,
to hear.
et cetera. So I think both of those guys bring a tremendous respect level and can help the team in their own ways, and are both very level people that can handle what's going to come this season with high expectations of being able to handle the peaks and being able to handle the valleys and still go about the business the same way. And that's how Mose likes to keep it. And I think they're going to be extensions of him in that way. And at the same time, already have a relationship with him that they're not going to be coming in as new coaches and be like, how do I just try to appease this guy? They know how to speak to him and meet him and can have honest conversations when things are good or bad or need to be addressed. So I just think great additions to the staff, and to be able to have those ties with him, I think is just a cherry on top.
Give me a 2 to 3 sentence response to this question.
All right.
What are your expectations of the Orlando Magic roster or the Orlando Magic team this year?
My expectations, I think, would be met. I hate doing this because
You don't have to if you don't want to.
no. I'm not saying that because like if you would have asked me this season, it would be last season. It would have been like, we'll take it a step further than the prior season. Win a playoff round, and then you look at the way the season played out, and you're like, man, it's a miracle that they got to the playoffs with all those injuries, and go up against the Celtics, win a game, and stuff like that. And so if you would have said like, well, they'll win one game, in a playoff series last year, I would be like, well, that didn't meet my expectations. But then when you look back on what they did, you're like, well, actually, if you would have told me all that happened, they exceeded the expectations. But I would say going into it, it would be great to have home court in the playoffs. I think we've seen the value for that, especially with the way that this team plays defensively, getting home court in the playoff series. And I think if you do that, you will advance in the playoffs. And then from there, who knows how things can go.
Sure.
Nobody was expecting the Indiana Pacers to be in the finals last season. And who knows if an injury doesn't happen where they go there. And I think this Magic team, even if that Pacers team was fully intact, could go toe to toe with them in the Eastern Conference, and that they're the reigning, Eastern Conference champion till somebody else knocks them off. So why shouldn't we be in the mix? I've watched this team compete, dominate that Indiana Pacers team. So I think that you take care of business, you develop, you get a home court advantage in a playoff series, and the rest of it can start to take care of itself.
I agree with that. Yeah. My
That's
expectations
longer
are.
than 2 sentences.
No, I love it. I love it though. I was trying to keep it short so we could wrap this up. I know you got other things to do today.
It's all good.
Yeah, home court advantage, and when this team is healthy, I want their on-court play to be discussed as one of the best teams in the league. That's what I hope to see and experience this year. I just want to say thank you for your time. This is going to be such a fun Magic season. You already know, we'll be having more of these conversations throughout the year. You're a regular on my show, and I've always been appreciative of that fact. And thank you for thank you for being willing to always jump on. Let's just let all the listeners know where they can find your work. I mean, they should know where to find your work, but if they don't, let's go ahead and let them know.
Yeah, no. So OrlandoMagic.com houses a lot of that. Follow me on Twitter, Dan_Savage. It should be a fun season of coverage. Put a lot of stuff out through Magic PR as well. So it's another place where my work gets disseminated. So it should be just a fun season of coverage, not only for me, but for everybody who works for the Magic or covers the Magic. I just think it's going to be that type of year where there's a lot of storylines, a lot of development storylines, and a lot of things that matter. When you're a 30-something win team, the 8th or 9th guy in the rotation and who has that and what they're doing don't necessarily always matter. And this format of a team with so many talented players, the type of depth we talked about, those things will matter. And as you go to the playoffs, do those rotations tighten? Do they stay the same? Those are all things we'll have to analyze and get to talk about because they're going to be exciting, meaningful things. And we expect this team to play meaningful basketball into May and hopefully even further. So, let's get aboard the ride. Let's do it. It should be a fun season to cover, interact, be a fan of. I think all those things are true this season.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, thanks again for joining the show. Listeners, make sure to catch us on Orlando Magic HQ. Tune in, give us all the likes, ratings, and reviews. Follow Dan on social. He's great. RIP to Gary Harris with his media comments to you with your last name. I was thinking about that as I was coming in this. Man, Gary Harris is gone. He was always so great with you and your last name during media sessions.
And I think this media day, the way things are looking, I don't want to make any promises that change. I think this media day is going to go back to a little bit more of the press conference type format.
Okay.
That allowed him to make that type of comment versus like the scrum type thing. I think this one's going to go back to more of like a press conference style format. So it would have opened the avenue for another opportunity like
We'll see. We'll see if there's another jokester. So, all right, Magic fans, thanks for tuning in. Dan, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Peace.